president from relentless attacks by the Democrats and the left-wing media and the deep state and the D.C. swamp. And it comes on the heels of a major victory for the president's allies on Capitol Hill. The House Ethics Committee has officially cleared House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes of accusations that he disclosed classified information, now opening the way for him to resume full control of the Russia investigation. Fox News Chief Intelligence Correspondent Catherine Herridge has our report.
From the beginning, I said this was baseless, and it was baseless.
After an 8-month review, the House Ethics Panel cleared the Republican chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, Devin Nunes, of revealing classified information while overseeing the Russia investigation.
I think it gives people in the United States a scene into how dirty this place can be.
Speaking exclusively to Fox News, Nunes said the complaint filed by liberal groups was designed to shut down his investigation that revealed the unmasking or identification of Trump campaign associates by President Obama's appointees in foreign intelligence reports.
Was the ethics complaint legitimate?
No, this was just, I think, a clear design by the left, working in conjunction with parts of our government to keep information away from me and the House Intelligence Committee.
Nunes publicly confirmed for the first time a months-long probe that goes well beyond the Russia case into the surveillance of Americans through the FISA or national security courts.
I believe we have evidence that there is definitely abuses have occurred.
And Nunes pointed to the leaked conversation of General Mike Flynn with the Russian ambassador. And the congressman said he is unaware of any leak investigation by the FBI or Justice Department.
I hate to use the word corrupt, but they become at least so dirty that who's watching the watchmen? Who's investigating these people? There is no one.
Nunes said he will call the Justice Department official recently demoted over his contacts with the firm behind the Trump dossier to testify. The congressman said he believes the Obama Justice Department, from Attorney General Loretta Lynch to her deputy Sally Yates and FBI Director James Comey, may have valuable information.
It's hard to believe that all of those people, there was a very small circle that were looking into the Trump dossier overall.
Today, CNN misreported that Donald Trump Jr. coordinated with WikiLeaks to obtain Clinton campaign emails, later correcting the story because their sources provided the wrong date, and the leaked campaign emails were already public. The Justice Department also released the Attorney General's security clearance application that did not require disclosure of foreign government contacts while in government business, unless he developed a personal relationship.
I think for the most part, people thought it had to do with Russia collusion, but we have no evidence of Russia collusion between the Trump campaign.
The federal judge who oversaw General Flynn's guilty plea earlier this month will no longer handle the case. Judge Rudolph Contreras, who was appointed by President Obama, also sits on the National Security Surveillance Court. A court spokeswoman offered no explanation for the recusal, and the Flynn case has been randomly reassigned. Greg?
Catherine Herridge. Catherine, thanks. Well, there are new revelations that special counsel Robert Mueller's legal team is nothing more than a pack of attack dogs with disturbing ties to the Democratic Party. The Wall Street Journal is reporting that Mueller's investigator, Andrew Weissmann, attended Hillary Clinton's election night party last November. National Security Advisor Ben Rhodes and the Clinton Foundation, as well as Hillary Clinton herself, in a lawsuit seeking access to her private emails. Well, what about all of that? Joining me now to talk about it, Chris Farrell, who's Director of Investigations and Research for Judicial Watch. Chris, good to see you. There are so many highly qualified, experienced, and skilled lawyers across America who do not have a political axe to grind. Had Mueller chosen them, it would have lent credibility and integrity to his investigation. He chose not to do that. Are you concerned that the Mueller team, including Mueller himself, have extreme political bias and corrupt motives?
Their credibility is now something less than zero. I mean, it's between the conflicts of interest, and you just outlined a number of them, and then the unlawful or at least highly questionable investigative tactics that have been employed so far. And I have reason to believe that even Chairman Nunes from the Intelligence Committee has been lied to over and over again with respect to this unmasking issue. When you combine all that and you realize that in large part it's the same cast of characters, the same inner circle, who are willfully blind with respect to the Clinton Foundation and Mrs. Clinton's server and Uranium One, et cetera, yet they have excruciating attention to detail on other really minor matters, their credibility is shot. And arguably, there are people involved who aren't just making administrative errors or aren't in some way failing to dot I's and cross T's. They're involved in criminal misconduct, in the abuse of the investigative system and their procedures. This is horrific. There needs to be a special counsel now for the special counsel.
Right. A watchdog looking at the watchdogs.
Correct.
I wrote a column today on FoxNews.com. You can check it out on our front page. It's entitled Robert Mueller and His Politically Biased Team of Prosecutors Must Go. Let me quote just one part of it, and we'll put it up on the screen. Mueller deliberately assembled a team of partisans with a history of political bias who appear determined to undo the results of the 2016 presidential election and drive President Trump from office. Because Mueller improperly stacked the deck of his special counsel staff with biased crusaders, he transformed what was supposed to be an impartial investigation into an illegitimate and seemingly corrupt one. To restore integrity, Attorney General Jeff Sessions should unrecuse himself for the limited purpose of cleaning up Mueller's mess. What do you think about that? I've looked into the law, the regulations. There's nothing to prevent Jeff Sessions from stepping in and saying, wait a minute, this is illegitimate. It has the appearance of impropriety, bias, and corruption. I am going to remove Mueller and all of the partisans on that team and replace them with people who are not.
Greg, you nailed it. They need to get fresh blood from the outside. Mueller's been conflicted since day one when it comes to his buddy Comey. The abusive process and the abuse of investigative powers and authority here, like I said before, I believe is criminal. No one believes anything that they're doing. They spent $7 million in order to go after Paul Manafort with a no-knock pre-dawn warrant and to charge him about spending too much money on his suits, and then go after General Flynn with the absolute thinnest of 1001 false official statement charges. No other charges concerning anything like conspiracy. No one yet can name what the criminal predicate is. What crime occurred?
Right.
No one can tell you. No one.
Well, nobody has had legal standing to challenge the legality of the appointment until somebody was charged. Now we have several people charged who could do it. Let me talk to you about Andrew Weissman, the so-called pit bull prosecutor who has strong allegiance to Democrats. This is a guy who was there at Donald Trump's opponent's, election night party. He's also a guy who wrote a fawning letter to Sally Yates, which is a clear anti-Trump bias. And he's also a guy who has close ties to Hui Chen. He hired her. They have a long history together. And there she is protesting Trump outside the White House, posting it on her Twitter account proudly. Weissman is a guy who has to go. Do you agree?
I couldn't agree more. It's a disgrace that anybody even thought he could get past, the sniff test on this. Here's a guy who's so far hard over anti-Trump and pro-Hillary Clinton. I don't know how anybody can look themselves in the mirror over this one. I would love to see if there's some video isolation of Weissman in the Javits Center, staring at a screen and crying.
Right.
This is a case where the guy's credibility is zero. His own colleagues, there's one assistant U.S. attorney who referred to him as a legal terrorist. This is a guy who goes overboard.
He had an ethics complaint that's 100 pages long. I've read it, in which he's accused of hiding evidence and threatening witnesses in the most unprincipled, thuggish way. We got to leave it at that, Chris.
Sure.
But the bottom line here is Robert Mueller has sabotaged the credibility of his own investigation. Chris.
They're done.
Chris Farrell, thanks very much.
Update. Robert Mueller's steamy affair with Nancy Pelosi will cost him big time by William Patterson for Guerrilla.
New details almost daily on the deep state collusion and the funding of opposition research on President Trump and what it led to. The House Intelligence Committee deserves great credit, now planning to compel testimony from a career Justice Department attorney who met during the election campaign with the Fusion GPS writer of the discredited, unverified Trump-Russian dossier. Fox News Chief Washington correspondent James Rosen has our report.
As Associate Deputy Attorney General, Bruce Ohr had an office 4 doors down from Deputy AG Rod Rosenstein until Wednesday morning, when the Justice Department stripped Ohr of his title and ousted him from his office. The move came just hours before Fox News was to report Ohr's previously undisclosed meetings last year with the 2 men responsible for the infamous anti-Trump dossier. Its author, Christopher Steele, a former British spy who consulted Russian sources for the incendiary document, and Glenn Simpson, founder of Fusion GPS, the opposition research firm paid by the Hillary Clinton campaign and the Democratic National Committee to compile the dossier.
We've asked since March to have this information.
House Intelligence Committee Chairman Devin Nunes, whose investigators uncovered Ohr's contacts with Fusion, fired off a second subpoena to DOJ Thursday afternoon, demanding access to Ohr's documents and Ohr himself, who retains his second job as director of DOJ's Organized Crime Drug Enforcement Task Force.
I've got a real problem with Strzok being on the case because of conflicts of interest.
The committee and DOJ had previously clashed over access to Peter Strzok, the FBI official removed from the staff of Special Counsel Robert Mueller in July following the discovery of anti-Trump text messages that Strzok sent to a colleague, and whom DOJ belatedly cleared for questioning by the Nunes panel last weekend after the text messages were being disclosed in media reports.
They need to produce the information, and if they don't, I don't want to go contempt. I want the information. I don't want the drama of a floor fight. But if we have a floor fight, it'll be because the department picked one, not us.
The dossier was given to the FBI in July 2016, around the same time that Donald Trump accepted the Republican nomination. Former FBI Director James Comey has described it as a compendium of salacious and unverified material about Mr. Trump and his associates. Congressional investigators have sought to determine whether the Democratic-funded dossier was used to obtain FISA surveillance on Trump campaign advisor Carter Page.
Does that mean that the dossier is not being reviewed or investigated or followed up on in any way?
It's Director Bob Mueller's responsibility now, so I don't know.
For 24 hours, the Justice Department couldn't tell us why Bruce Ohr had been demoted. Thursday morning, we received a statement saying it was because he was wearing 2 hats, meaning holding 2 jobs, and that was, quote, unusual. Later Thursday, senior DOJ officials told us Ohr had withheld from his superiors his meetings with the men from Fusion GPS. Lou?
James, thank you. So the FBI first lied when they did decide to answer, and then they told the truth. There's a pattern there, isn't there? We're coming right back with much more. Stay with us. Coming up next on Lou Dobbs Tonight, how pervasive is the deep state? Do they really intend a coup d'etat? Congressman Matt Gaetz. There will be no government shutdown, at least for 2 weeks. Congressman has approved a spending bill that will keep the government open through December 22nd, while lawmakers work on an agreement on military spending, DACA, and other contentious issues. The House approved the bill on a 235 to 193 vote, and it would not have passed without Democratic support. An hour later, the Senate followed suit and passed the continuing resolution on an 81 to 14 vote. Well, joining us now, one of the 18 House Republicans who voted no on the continuing resolution. Joining us tonight, Congressman Matt Gaetz. He serves on a number of key committees, including Judiciary, Budget, and Armed Services. Good to have you with us. It's good news that you all are going to keep the government going. How likely are the prospects you'll be able to move to a budget?
Well, we absolutely need to get to the business of cutting spending, Lou, and one of the reasons I voted against this continuing resolution is it's just more of the same. More funding of Planned Parenthood, more funding of the Obamacare exchanges, more funding of Medicaid expansion. People elected Donald Trump and this Republican Congress to do things differently. I'm very proud of the budget the House passed that cut over $200 billion in spending by saying that people on welfare need to actually meet a work requirement if they're able-bodied childless adults. Unfortunately, the Senate rejected that budget, and I think the House rolled over too quickly. So I'm going to keep fighting for spending cuts to go along with tax cuts, and I think that's the magic recipe to unlock the great potential of the American economy.
What would you say if I said all of that pales in significance to the absolute corrupt Justice Department leadership and that of the FBI and the special counsel who are attacking this president daily, relentlessly, and with great force.
Well, I would agree with you entirely, Lou. That's one of the reasons why I filed legislation calling for the firing of Robert Mueller. Every single day, we're finding more evidence that Robert Mueller was recruiting people who had an express and known bias against the President of the United States. Today, I asked Christopher Wray, did Robert Mueller only hire people who hate the President? And he couldn't answer that question. But it's one hell of a coincidence that every day we're finding more and more examples of people who express their dislike of the president and then find themselves investigating him. Meanwhile, Hillary Clinton never really faced a serious investigation. She was investigated by her own fan club. Every time we get more evidence there, it seems as though Hillary's folks were the ones making the decisions about her outcomes, and it's still Hillary's folks that are persecuting the president.
Oh, I think you're exactly right. And at this point, I think the American people are awakening to the reality of the claims that have been made about Robert Mueller, about the team that he's assembled. 17 attorneys prosecuting, 9 of them Democratic donors, 5 of those Hillary-specific donors, and not a single Republican on the team anywhere, at least that we could find.
Well, and it's not like there's not enough federal prosecutors in our system. We have a bevy of highly talented people who have demonstrated throughout their careers a tremendous amount of integrity. Those just don't happen to be the people currently investigating the president. I mean, look at Weissman, Mueller's number 2. He was out there praising people who were actively defying the president of the United States and telling him how proud he was of them. This is ludicrous. The American people cannot accept a rigged system where you've got people biased against the president conducting the investigation against him. And the fact that today Christopher Wray wouldn't tell us whether or not the FBI paid for the dossier against the president with taxpayer money. He wouldn't tell us whether or not Hillary Clinton got special treatment. All he said is that there's an inspector general that's looking into all these things. But I mean, what's it going to take? You know, if you walk outside and it's raining, you don't need an inspector general to tell you to get an umbrella. You just got to believe your own lying eyes, and that's not what we're doing nearly enough of here in Washington.
Well, and what course is Congress going to take? I've asked